So I'm here at the Water Cube in Barcelona with David Boyce. Pronounce it Boyce?
Boys, just like girls.
Boyce is like girls.
Just like girls.
So, tell me, what do you do?
I work for a global trade union federation. It's called Public Services International. We represent 20 million working women and men in 150 countries. My responsibility for the past 15 years has been working in the utilities of water, energy, waste, as well as the interesting file of worker pension funds. So, what's our position? We're the workers who deliver the services that your family depends on, that your community depends on. Without us, you get no water, you get no energy, you get no health care, you get no education, you get no public transport. It's our members who do it. Okay. Now, in the water sector, we have noticed over the past 15, 20 years, this ideological push for privatization, to let the market decide who gets what. It's in part started by Thatcherism, where her apparent goal was to improve public services. But her real goal, as indicated years later by her chief political strategist, was to destroy the labor movement, because the labor movement was the main base of the Labour Party, and the Labour Party was the main challenge to the Conservative Party. So this whole strategy, which then Reagan took, was not so much about making public services more effective, more accessible, more equitable. It was a political power game.
Yeah.
Now, outside of the UK, where, yes, Thatcher managed to sell off all your water utilities, which then have been bought and sold, and tariffs have gone up.
Hey, the energy, I'll tell you, the energy operators are under a lot of pressure on that at the moment, because the prices are going up and up, and
sure, but you
involved
also
in almost campaigning against them at the moment. It's quite interesting.
Well, and look at the prices that your public utilities, which you bought and paid for with your own tax pounds, look at the price they were sold for. They were sold for a song. There are instant millionaires made when Thatcher sold these off.
Now, you pointed out to me, before, there's a lot of talk about waters and water utilities, sanitation, the future being market driven, and that pressure's there. Ultimately, it's not going to work, is what you're saying.
No. First of all, read the latest statement by Pope Francis from 2 days ago about what is wrong with the economy. I'm not very much into the Vatican, but the way he puts it is actually quite interesting. The fact is that the market decides winners. The market trashes losers. It doesn't care about losers. It only cares about the winners. So, what's the problem with market forces? First of all, we've seen in our 15 years experience, 20 years experience with the privatization model, especially in developing countries, there's a problem there, because there's so much poverty that there's not enough money to make profits for the companies.
Yeah.
So they're not interested. Now, when a private company goes into a risky market, for example, Jakarta, they insist on 20 to 25% return on investment per year. That money is then exported out of the country, sent back to the headquarters to do other mergers, acquisitions, takeovers, pay off shareholder dividends, or extremely healthy CEO and top management.
Yeah, so it's essentially, there's this issue of an expectation of high return on investment in places which are perceived as risky, when actually they're just communities, they're places that need infrastructure, and that infrastructure just needs to be put in place, but it's not something that should be based on risk evaluation and financing the risk.
it's not
it's
the
just
bankers
financing the infrastructure and the services.
See, and the problem we're seeing in the sector now,
with a very long-term sense of return on that.
But what we're seeing in the sector now, it's the bankers are driving the agenda. Well, the bankers are driving us straight to hell. Look at 2008, what they've done to us. And then any attempt to regulate them in the public interest, they have so much muscle that it's not going to happen. They have taken more in bailouts than all of the benefits of all of the privatizations across the whole world combined, ever, in just the bailouts to the US banks. So you add in the UK banks, then the German banks, then, I mean, this is just the wrong way to set it up. It's not going to work. Now, if you look at the return on investment that a public utility, well run, well managed, makes, it's about 4 or 5% per year. Their cost of capital is lower because they typically have a sovereign guarantee. They can get into the capital markets more easily than a private corporation. They don't have shareholders. Their shareholders is the community. They don't sole source products. So one of the things the multinationals do is they sole source into their own vertically integrated structure, so you pay twice as much for a meter that you need to pay. Now, in a properly run public utility, easily half of the procurement goes to the private sector. The difference is, do you run it on a for-profit basis, or do you do procurement with the private sector, but you run it in order to meet the 3 key pillars of sustainability: social, environmental, and financial. Yeah. This is what the private sector has problems for. Now, from our perspective, what we see is the OECD 30, the 30 richest countries in the world, are telling the developing countries, don't do as we did, but do as we tell you now. We all built our water and energy systems using public money and public management. But now we're telling them, because of a neoliberal market ideology, do it the way the ideology tells us, but don't check the facts. Because the facts are, it ain't working this way.
Well, it's good to talk to you. I appreciate you pointing out some of the, in terms of the Aquapedia, which we at Akvo run, there's some real heavy leaning towards some of the certain, market-driven ideological approaches there. And it's good feedback for me, actually, because there's a balanced story here that needs to be told. So thank you.
Now remember, I'm going to add another piece.
Be very brief, though.
What are the main costs in water? Energy to transport it, chemicals to treat it, and the workforce. When you privatize or are seeking to maximize your profits, what can you cut? You can't cut the energy because you have to transport your water. Can't cut the chemicals because you got to clean it. So you cut the workforce. Yeah. You cut our wages, our working conditions, you outsource the staff, you destroy our careers. That's what's happening.
Well, good to meet you. Thanks for talking to us.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Pleasure.